There are people right now enduring unimaginable suffering, and they're surviving it because they know why it matters. And there are people experiencing far less pain who are completely destroyed by it, broken by it, ready to quit life over it. The difference isn't the size of the wound. The difference is whether they have a reason to bear it. Purpose doesn't eliminate your pain. Purpose makes your pain make sense. And when pain makes sense, you can carry weight that would crush someone who doesn't understand what they're building. You want to know why you are so tired? It's not because life is hard. Life has always been hard. You're exhausted because you're grinding through days without knowing why. You wake up and the weight is already there before your feet hit the floor. You push through meetings, conversations, responsibilities, and every single one of them feels like you dragging stones uphill. And the worst part, you can't even explain why it hurts so much. You look around and see people handling the same challenges, maybe worse, and they're fine, but you're barely surviving. And you start wondering what's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You're just trying to endure pressure without understanding what it's building. You're trying to survive pain without knowing what it's preparing you for. And that's the difference between suffering that strengthens and suffering that destroys. When you don't know your purpose, every obstacle feels personal. Every setback feels like proof you're not enough. Every rejection cuts twice as deep because you're not sure what you were supposed to be doing anyway. You out here getting knocked down and you don't even know what game you're playing. Listen to me carefully. Confusion doesn't just cloud your mind. Confusion multiplies your pain. When you don't know where you're going, every detour feels like failure. When you don't know what you're building, every setback feels like collapse. You're carrying wounds that won't heal because you can't figure out why you got them in the first place. Was it random? Was it your fault? Was it a lesson or just cruelty? And because you don't have answers, those wounds stay open. They fester. They define you. And here's what nobody tells you about living without purpose. You start seeking validation from anything that will give it to you. You become addicted to approval because at least when someone says you did well, you feel like you matter for a moment. You chase positions, titles, recognition, anything that makes you feel significant, but it never lasts. Because approval from others is a terrible substitute for understanding from within. You can have a room full of people clapping for you and still feel completely empty. You can achieve everything they said you should achieve and still wake up wondering why you're here. You know what's tragic? Wasting years of your life in motion but not in direction. Moving fast but going nowhere. Busy but aimless. Productive but pointless. You look back at the last 5 years and you can't even explain what you were doing. You were surviving. You were reacting. You were keeping up. But you weren't building anything. You weren't becoming anyone. You were just here, present, but not purposeful. Breathing, but not living. And the pain during those years, unbearable. Because it had no meaning. You went through hell and came out with nothing to show for it except scars you don't understand. People ask you what you learned and you don't even know what to say. You suffered, but you can't say why. You struggled, but you don't know what it was for. And that kind of pain doesn't make you stronger. It makes you bitter. It makes you fragile. It makes you afraid of life itself because you've been hurt before and it didn't even count toward anything. I'm telling you right now, you were not designed to live like that. You were not created to endure random suffering with no explanation. You were not built to just survive until you die. There is a reason you're here. There is a design behind your existence. And when you discover that design, everything changes. Not because the pain stops, but because the pain starts making sense. Think about this. When you buy something and it breaks, what do? You go back to the manufacturer. You read the manual. You find out what it was designed to do because the creator knows what the creation was built for. You don't ask the refrigerator why it's not heating your food. You don't get angry at the hammer for not being a screwdriver. Everything makes sense when you understand its purpose. Everything functions when you know what it was designed to accomplish. And you, right now, struggling to understand why life keeps pressing you, why circumstances keep stretching you, why pressure keeps finding you, you need to go back to your manufacturer. Because the pain you're experiencing isn't random. It's specific. It's intentional. It's preparation. Here's what most people miss. A seed doesn't fall into soft, comfortable soil and stay there peacefully until it becomes a tree. That seed gets buried. It gets covered in darkness. It gets pressed down by the weight of the earth above it. And if that seed could think, if it could feel, it would assume it's being destroyed. It can't see light. It can't see progress. All it knows is pressure and darkness. But here's the truth. That pressure isn't killing the seed. That pressure is activating it. The seed doesn't break under the soil. The seed breaks open. And what comes out of that breaking is life. The darkness isn't punishment. The darkness is the environment where roots form. And you can't have a tree without roots. You can't have strength without something that first felt like suffering. But the seed doesn't panic because the seed knows what it is. The seed doesn't question the process because the process is part of its design. It was made for this. The breaking was always part of the becoming. And you, right now, under pressure, you don't understand. In darkness, you didn't choose. You're not being buried. You're being planted. What feels like the end is actually the beginning. What looks like destruction is actually development. But you'll never see it that way until you understand your purpose. Let me tell you about the lion. A young lion doesn't wake up one day and just know how to hunt. It doesn't instinctively understand strategy, patience, timing. It has to be trained. And that training isn't gentle. The cub gets swatted. It gets corrected. It gets pushed into situations that are uncomfortable, even frightening. It faces challenges that seem too big for its size. And if you looked at that lion cub in the middle of its training, you might think it's suffering. You might think it's being mistreated. But the mother lion knows something the cub doesn't know yet. She knows what he's becoming. She knows that one day this cub will have to lead. One day this cub will have to protect. One day this cub will have to survive in a wilderness that shows no mercy to the weak. So she doesn't train him for comfort. She trains him for capacity. The struggle isn't cruelty. The struggle is curriculum. And every single thing that lion endures, every correction, every challenge, every moment of discomfort, it's all building something. Instinct, strength, confidence, skill. The pain has a point. The pressure has a purpose. That young lion isn't being destroyed by the process. That young lion is being developed by it. And when it finally steps into its role, when it finally walks into its destiny, it won't resent the training. It will realize the training was the only reason it survived. Now let me paint you a picture. There's a craftsman in a workshop. He's holding a piece of raw metal, rough, unrefined, dull. It's not a weapon yet. It's just potential. And if that metal could speak, it would tell you it's fine the way it is. It doesn't need to change. But the craftsman knows better. The craftsman knows what this metal could become. So he places it in the fire, and the metal screams. The heat is unbearable. The flames are overwhelming. If the metal had a choice, it would jump out of that fire and stay exactly as it was. But the craftsman doesn't pull it out. He waits. He watches. And when the metal is glowing, when it's soft enough to shape, he pulls it out and starts hammering. Strike after strike after strike. The metal doesn't understand. This feels like violence. This feels like destruction. But the craftsman isn't destroying the metal. He's shaping it. Every strike is intentional. Every angle matters. And when he's done hammering, he plunges it into cold water. Shock. Another extreme. Another unbearable moment. But that shock is what hardens the blade. That shock is what makes it unbreakable. And when it's finished, when the process is complete, that piece of metal isn't just metal anymore. It's a sword. Sharp, strong, ready for battle. And every single part of the process, the fire, the hammering, the shock, it was all necessary. The pain had a purpose. The pressure had a plan. And the blade that can now cut through anything is only that strong because of what it endured in the hands of the craftsman. You are that metal, and life is the craftsman. And every single thing you've been through, every fire, every strike, every shock, it wasn't random. It was refinement. You're not being destroyed. You're being designed. But if you don't understand that, if you don't know what you're becoming, then every part of the process just feels like suffering. You'll spend your whole life trying to avoid the fire instead of realizing the fire is what makes you valuable. There's a story I want you to hear. A man spent years wandering, not physically lost, but lost in every way that mattered. He had a job, but no mission. He had relationships, but no connection. He had activities, but no direction. Every day felt the same. Wake up, go through the motions, go to bed, repeat. And the weight of it was crushing him. He kept thinking something was wrong with his circumstances. Wrong job, wrong city, wrong people. So he kept changing things. New job, new environment, new relationships. But nothing changed inside. The emptiness followed him everywhere because the emptiness wasn't about where he was. It was about why he was. One day, he stopped running. He sat in complete silence and asked himself a question he'd been avoiding for years. What am I actually here for? Not what do people expect from me. Not what looks good. Not what pays well. What am I here for? And for the first time in his life, he got quiet enough to hear the answer. And the answer wasn't what he expected. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy. It required him to let go of things he'd been holding on to. It required him to walk away from approval he'd been chasing. It required him to step into something that scared him. But the moment he said yes to that purpose, everything shifted. The pain didn't stop, but the pain started making sense. The struggles didn't disappear, but the struggles started building something. He finally understood what he was enduring for, and that understanding gave him strength he didn't know he had. Here's the truth most people never learn. Direction and movement are not the same thing. You can be moving fast and going nowhere. You can be busy and still be lost. You can be productive and still be pointless. Movement is easy. Direction requires purpose. And when you have direction, you stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. You stop saying yes to everything and start saying yes to the right things. You stop being available for every distraction and start being committed to your destination. And the pain you experience along the way is no longer just pain, it's progress. It's no longer just struggle, it's strategy. You're not just surviving anymore, you're building. Before I continue, answer one question honestly. What pain are you carrying right now that you can't even explain to yourself? What weight are you dragging through your days that you can't put into words when people ask if you're okay? If you're still listening, something inside you is waking up. Something in you knows there's more to your story than what you've been living. Something in you is tired of surviving without understanding, and that something is about to break through. Let me tell you what happens when you finally discover your why. The past stops haunting you because it starts teaching you. The rejection you couldn't understand suddenly becomes the redirection you needed. The doors that closed in your face weren't keeping you out of your destiny. They were keeping you from wasting time in the wrong room. The people who walked away weren't abandoning you. They were clearing space for the ones who were supposed to walk with you. Every single thing that felt like loss was actually preparation. Every single moment that felt like punishment was actually positioning. You've been looking at your life like it's broken, like something went wrong, like you missed your chance, or made too many mistakes, or started too late. But what if nothing went wrong? What if everything that happened was exactly what needed to happen to build the person you're becoming? The potter doesn't apologize to the clay for the pressure. The potter knows that without the wheel spinning, without the hands pressing, without the heat of the kiln, that clay stays formless. It stays soft. It stays useless. The pressure isn't the problem. The pressure is the process. And you've been resisting the very thing that's trying to shape you into something unbreakable. Think about a forest. When you walk through a forest, you see these massive trees, strong, tall, unmovable, but you don't see what made them that way. You don't see the years they spent in silence. You don't see the storms they survived. You don't see the roots that had to grow deep in the dark soil before the trunk could rise into the light. Those trees didn't become strong because life was easy. They became strong because life was hard, and they had no choice but to grow deeper. When the wind came, they couldn't run. When the drought came, they couldn't quit. They had to reach down further. They had to stretch up higher. And every season that tested them made them stronger. That's you right now. You growing in silence. You developing in the dark. And you think because nobody sees it, it doesn't count. You think because it's taking longer than you expected, you're failing. But roots don't grow on a schedule. Strength doesn't develop on your timeline. You're not late. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be for what you're becoming. And the silence you're in right now, that's not isolation. That's incubation. You're not being forgotten. You're being formed. Here's what nobody tells you about seasons of isolation. They feel like rejection, but they're actually protection. When a clay pot is being shaped, the potter has to remove it from everything else. It can't be touched by other hands. It can't be moved around. It has to sit alone under the steady pressure of the craftsman's focus. And if you looked at that pot on the wheel, you'd think it's lonely. You think it's being excluded, but it's not being excluded. It's being perfected. The isolation isn't punishment. The isolation is part of the preparation. You can't be shaped in a crowd. You can't be refined in chaos. Some seasons require you to be set apart so you can be made ready. And I know it hurts. I know you look around and see everyone else connecting, celebrating, moving forward together, and you're wondering why you're alone. But you're not alone because you're unwanted. You're alone because you're being worked on. There's a difference between being lonely and being set apart. Loneliness is empty. Being set apart is full of purpose. You're not waiting for nothing. You're being prepared for something. And when you come out of this season, when the process is complete, you won't come out the same. You'll come out stronger, clearer, unshakable. Purpose doesn't remove the pain. Purpose reframes it. Purpose doesn't erase the struggle. Purpose explains it. Purpose doesn't make life easier. Purpose makes life worth it. When you know why you're here, you stop asking if you can handle what you're going through. You start asking what is building in you. When you know your assignment, you stop being offended by the preparation. You start being grateful for it. Because you realize that the very thing you've been complaining about is the very thing that's qualifying you. Let me tell you something about identity. You can't discover who you are by listening to what people say about you. You can't find your purpose by chasing what's popular. You can't build your life on applause because applause is temporary and purpose is permanent. When you live for the approval of others, you become a slave to their opinions. And their opinions change with the wind. One day you celebrated, the next day you criticized. One day you're enough, the next day you're too much. You drive yourself insane trying to be what everyone else needs you to be. And at the end of all that performing, you still won't know who you are. But when you go back to your design, when you understand what you were created to do, you stop performing and start functioning. You stop pretending and start operating. You stop trying to be everything to everyone and start being exactly what you were made to be. And the people who don't understand, let them go. The opportunities that don't align, walk away. The validation that requires you to shrink, reject it. Because you were not built for comfort. You were built for contribution. And contribution requires capacity. And capacity is built through pressure. You grow in silence. You heal in silence. You rise in silence. Nobody sees the late nights. Nobody sees the internal battles. Nobody sees the moments you almost quit but chose to keep going. Nobody sees the tears, the doubt, the fear, the exhaustion. They only see the result. They only see you standing when it's over. And they'll say, you're lucky. They'll say you had it easy. They'll say you're talented. But you know the truth. You know what it cost. You know what you endured. And you won't need them to understand because you know that every single ounce of pain was building something in you that nothing else could build. Here's the shift. Stop seeing yourself as a victim of your circumstances. You're not a victim. You're a project under construction. And every tool life uses on you, every chisel, every hammer, every fire, it's not there to destroy you, it's there to shape you. The question isn't, why is this happening to me? The question is, what is this making me? What is this pressure producing? What is this pain revealing? What is this season preparing me for? You've been so focused on when the pain will end that you haven't stopped to ask what the pain is teaching. You've been so desperate for relief that you haven't considered what you're being built to carry. Because here's the truth. If God removes the weight before you're strong enough to carry purpose, you'll collapse under the assignment. If life hands you the opportunity before you've been developed, you'll destroy it. The delay isn't denial. The delay is development. And every day you spend in the process, you're becoming someone who can sustain what's coming. You're not being rejected. You're being redirected. You're not being overlooked. You're being prepared. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. And the moment you stop resisting and start receiving, the moment you stop complaining and start learning, the moment you stop running and start trusting, everything you've been through will begin to make sense. The pain will connect to the purpose. The struggle will connect to the strength. And you look back at this season and realize it wasn't wasted, it was necessary. It wasn't cruel, it was kind, because it made you into someone who could handle what you were created for. Let me tell you one more story. There was a lion cub born in captivity, raised behind bars, fed on schedule, protected from danger. It never had to hunt, never had to fight, never had to struggle. And for a while, that seemed like a good life. Safe, predictable, comfortable. But one day, the cage door opened, and the cub, now grown, stepped out into the wild. And within days, it was struggling. It didn't know how to hunt. It didn't know how to defend itself. It didn't know how to survive. Because comfort had kept it alive, but comfort had never made it strong. It had never developed the instincts it needed. It had never built the capacity it required. And that lion realized something devastating. The cage that protected it had also crippled it. Now imagine another lion. This one born in the wilderness. No walls, no guarantees. From the moment it could walk, it was learning. It faced hunger. It faced danger. It got hurt. It made mistakes. There were days it didn't eat. Nights, it had to stay alert. Moments, it thought it wouldn't make it. But every single challenge built something in that lion. Every struggle sharpened an instinct. Every fight taught a lesson. Every scar told a story of survival. And when that lion reached maturity, it wasn't just alive, it was powerful. It wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Because the wilderness that seemed cruel was actually the greatest teacher it ever had. You've been praying for the cage. You've been begging God to make life easier. You've been asking for comfort, for protection, for a break from the pressure. And I'm telling you right now, be careful what you ask for. Because the easy path creates weak people. The comfortable road builds nothing inside you. You don't develop strength on the couch. You don't build character in safety. You don't discover what you're made of until you're tested. And every single thing you've been through, every hardship, every betrayal, every loss, every moment you thought would destroy you, it was the wilderness. And the wilderness wasn't trying to kill you. The wilderness was trying to make you. When you finally understand your purpose, when you finally see what you're being built for, you stop resenting the process. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? You stop looking back at what you lost and start looking forward at what you're gaining. Because the person you were before the pain couldn't carry what's coming. The version of you that existed before the pressure wasn't ready for the assignment. You needed to be broken down so you could be rebuilt. You needed to be emptied so you could be refilled. You needed to lose what was familiar so you could reach for what was destined. And here's what's about to happen. You're about to step into rooms you weren't qualified for a year ago. You're about to handle situations that would have destroyed the old you. You're about to carry weight that the person used to be couldn't even lift. And when you get there, when you're standing in the middle of your purpose, when you're operating in your assignment, you're going to look back at this season and thank God for every single thing that tried to break you. Because it didn't break you. It built you. Every tear watered a seed. Every setback set you up. Every closed door led you to the right one. The pain you're in right now is not permanent, but what is producing in you is the struggle you're facing right now is not forever, but the strength it's building will last. You are not going through this for nothing. You are not suffering without cause. There is a reason behind every season. There is purpose behind every pressure. And the moment you align yourself with that purpose, the moment you stop fighting the process and start flowing with it, you will feel a shift, not in your circumstances, in your spirit. Because purpose doesn't change what's happening around you. Purpose changes how you see what's happening around you. You were never designed to just get through life. You were designed to fulfill an assignment that only you can complete. There is something in you that the world needs. There is a gift, a message, a solution, a creation that won't exist if you don't step into who you were made to be. And hell itself has been trying to stop you, because hell knows that if you ever discover your purpose, if you ever walk in your full identity, you will become unstoppable. That's why the attacks have been so heavy. That's why the resistance has been so strong. That's why you've faced opposition that didn't make sense. Because you're not just anybody, you're a threat to the kingdom of darkness. You carry something that changes atmospheres. You carry something that shifts generations. And I need you to hear this. The pain that almost destroyed you is about to become your greatest testimony. The wound that wouldn't heal is about to become the wisdom you share. The battle that broke you down is about to become the breakthrough that lifts others up. Nothing you've been through was wasted. Every single experience, good or bad, was collecting data, building character, shaping perspective, developing empathy. You couldn't encourage someone who's struggling if you'd never struggled. You couldn't speak hope to the hopeless if you'd never been there yourself. Your pain has a purpose, and that purpose is bigger than you. Stop waiting for the pain to end before you start living. Stop waiting for everything to be perfect before you step into purpose. Stop waiting for permission, for validation, for the right moment. The right moment is now. The permission you need is already inside you. The validation comes from knowing who you were created to be, not from who applauds when you perform. You have spent too many years on pause. You have wasted too much time waiting for conditions that will never be perfect. Life will never stop throwing challenges at you. Circumstances will never align exactly how you want them to. But purpose doesn't wait for perfect conditions. Purpose moves in the middle of the mess. You are being called right now, not to something easy, not to something comfortable, not to something that makes sense to everyone watching. You're being called to something that requires everything you've been through to prepare for. You're being called to walk a path that only you can walk, to carry a message that only you can deliver, to fulfill an assignment that has your name written on it. And the very thing that's been pressing you, testing you, refining you, that's been the training ground. You've been in the wilderness, but you weren't lost. You were learning. And I'm telling you right now, your time is coming. The season is shifting. The door is opening. The opportunity is approaching. And when it arrives, you won't be the same person who started this journey. You'll be stronger, wiser, steadier, clearer. You'll walk into that room with authority because you've been through the fire. You'll speak with confidence because you've survived the silence. You'll lead with compassion because you know what it's like to be broken. And the pain that you thought would disqualify you will actually be the very thing that qualifies you. So stop running from the process. Stop resenting the pressure. Stop hating the season you're in. This is where you're being made. This is where your identity is being solidified. This is where your purpose is being clarified. And when you come out, when this chapter closes and the next one begins, you won't come out bitter. You'll come out better. You won't come out broken. You'll come out built. And everyone who watched you struggle will witness you soar. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. Not because the pain stopped, but because you found a purpose worth bearing it for. Your pain is not the end of your story. Your pain is the beginning of your power. Your struggle is not proof that you're failing. Your struggle is proof that you're being prepared. And the same hands that allowed the pressure are the same hands that are shaping you into something the world has never seen. Trust the process. Trust the timing. Trust the pain. Because purpose makes pain bearable. And you, my friend, were built for something far greater than comfort. You were built for impact. Now rise and walk into it. If this message spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. And if you want more messages that grow your soul, subscribe, because your journey has just begun.